The envelope slid through my mail slot with the soft whisper of expensive paper. I might have missed it entirely if I hadn't been sitting in Dad's old armchair, staring blankly at the wall. 6 months after his funeral, I still found myself drifting to this spot each evening. But this particular Tuesday, the crisp white rectangle caught my attention. My name written in my sister Sarah's perfect cursive. A birthday invitation. From family I hadn't heard from in months. A special celebration for Daniel's 35th, it read. At the family home, dress nicely. My fingers trembled slightly as I set the invitation on the coffee table. Dad's coffee table. In Dad's house. The house that, according to his will, now belonged to me along with the majority of his estate. The house my siblings had stopped visiting the moment the lawyer read those terms. I reached for my phone, scrolling through 6 months of minimal contact. A few obligatory holiday texts, a single stilted phone call when I needed Sarah's signature on some paperwork. Nothing that suggested they'd suddenly want to throw me a birthday party. Something wasn't right. That feeling only intensified 3 nights later. I'd been having trouble sleeping. Grief does that to you, and decided to make some tea around midnight. As I approached the kitchen, I heard it. The subtle creak of Dad's office door, followed by the shuffle of papers. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. Living alone in this big house had made me jumpy, but I knew those sounds weren't my imagination. Moving silently down the hallway, I eased myself against the wall beside the partially open door. Through the crack, I could see my brother Tom's face illuminated by the desk lamp. He was frantically rifling through Dad's filing cabinet, muttering under his breath, occasionally checking his phone as if receiving instructions. "It's got to be here somewhere," he whispered. "Sarah said he kept copies of everything. I should have confronted him then and there, asked what the hell he was doing in my house at midnight without my knowledge. But something, instinct perhaps, held me back. Instead, I retreated to the shadows and watched him search for another 20 minutes before leaving empty-handed, using his old key to lock up behind him. The next morning, I called the locksmith. While waiting for them to arrive, I checked Dad's filing cabinet myself. Nothing seemed obviously missing, but something felt off about the arrangement. The folders had always been meticulously organized. Dad was nothing if not precise. But now they seemed just slightly out of order. I'd been avoiding going through his papers, a task too painful to face. But now I wondered what Tom had been looking for so desperately. That afternoon, I received the first of what would become many overly friendly calls from Sarah. "Just checking in on my baby brother," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "We haven't talked much since, well, you know, I miss you." Our conversation meandered awkwardly until she casually mentioned the birthday party they were planning. Nothing fancy, just family. But there are some things we should all discuss together. Dad would have wanted us to make decisions as a family. The slight emphasis on decisions made the hair on my neck stand up. Later that same week, I was sorting through mail in the kitchen when I overheard Sarah's voice drifting through the open window from the driveway. I hadn't heard her car arrive, and she clearly didn't know I was home. "Yes, Uncle Richard, I've got the paperwork ready," she was saying, her voice low but urgent. "Tom couldn't find the original, but the lawyer says this should work just as well. We just need his signature at the party, and then we'll all get our fair share." Fair share. As if Dad's decision to leave the house and business to me, the only child who had worked alongside him for 15 years while they pursued their careers in other states, was somehow unfair. I ducked below the window as Sarah walked past, phone pressed to her ear. "He won't suspect anything," she continued. "He's too trusting. Always has been. Just make sure everyone knows to keep the focus on the celebration until the right moment." The calls started coming from all corners after that. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted to catch up. My Aunt Meredith called to ask about my work schedule, wondering if I was taking time off following Dad's death. Even my teenage niece texted to ask if I was doing okay with all the responsibility of managing Dad's affairs. The most telling call came from my cousin Pete, who had been drinking. "Man, can't wait to see the old house again," he slurred one evening. "Sarah says once everything's sorted out after your birthday, the family might finally get together there more often." I said nothing revealing in response, but after hanging up, I sat in Dad's study for hours, putting the pieces together. The unexpected party, the secretive conversations, the sudden interest in my schedule and well-being, the mention of paperwork ready for signing. They were planning to use my birthday as cover to pressure me into redistributing Dad's estate. The final confirmation came when I decided to check Dad's safe, the old-fashioned one hidden behind the painting in his study. I knew the combination. He'd shared it with me years ago when he first made me partner in his accounting business. Inside should have been several important documents, including his original will. The safe was still locked. Nothing seemed disturbed at first glance. But the envelope containing his original will, the one leaving me the house, the business, and the majority of his savings, was missing. That night, I drove to the electronics store and purchased a small recording device. The next day, I placed it carefully beneath Dad's desk, positioned to capture any conversations in the room. I set up another in the living room where the party would likely take place. As I tested the equipment, a strange calm settled over me. If my family wanted to play games, they'd find I wasn't as trusting or naive as they believed. Dad hadn't raised me to be an accountant without teaching me to verify everything, even when it came to family, especially when it came to family. The morning after installing the recording devices, I drove downtown to the offices of Henderson, Patel & Associates. The brass nameplate on the door had dulled since the last time I'd visited with Dad. Mr. Henderson's secretary, Gail, looked up from her computer and her expression softened. "Daniel, it's good to see you," she said, rising to give me a brief hug. "How are you holding up?" I managed a smile. "Taking it day by day. Is Mr. Henderson available? I don't have an appointment, but it's important." 10 minutes later, I sat across from Walter Henderson, my father's attorney for over 30 years. His office smelled of leather and old books, comfortingly familiar. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and leaned forward. "What can I do for you, Daniel?" I took a deep breath. "Has anyone from my family contacted you recently about my father's will?" His eyebrows rose slightly. "As a matter of fact, yes. Your sister Sarah called last week asking about procedures for contesting a will. And your Uncle Richard stopped by, rather unannounced, asking to review the inheritance details." My stomach tightened. "What did you tell them?" "Only what I'm legally permitted to disclose." He paused, studying me. "Daniel, your father's wishes were quite clear. The business and house are yours, with specific smaller bequests to your siblings. The will is legally sound." "And the original copy of the will?" "Safely in our firm's vault," he replied. "Though your father kept a notarized copy in his home, safe as well, the copy that was now missing." I explained my suspicions about the upcoming birthday party, watching as Henderson's expression grew increasingly concerned. "This is troubling," he said finally. They might present you with some sort of redistribution agreement. If you were to sign it under duress or false pretenses, would it be legally binding? Potentially, yes. He removed his glasses, polishing them with a handkerchief. Document the gathering. If you feel pressured, don't sign anything. Call me immediately. After leaving his office, I drove to a small electronics shop on the edge of town. The bell jingled as I entered, and a young woman with purple-streaked hair greeted me from behind the counter. Security cameras? She repeated after I explained what I needed. Home system or something more discreet? Discreet, I replied. Very discreet. An hour later, I left with 4 nearly invisible cameras and instructions for installing them. That evening, I carefully positioned them where my family was most likely to gather: the living room, dining room, Dad's study, and the kitchen. Each was small enough to blend into the decor but powerful enough to capture clear video and audio. As I tested the system on my laptop, watching the empty rooms from different angles, a wave of sadness washed over me. How had it come to this? Setting up surveillance to catch my own family in the act of betrayal? The next day, I created a fake Facebook profile under the name Daniel Matthews, instead of my actual name, Daniel Matthews Carter. Using this alias, I sent friend requests to my siblings, cousins, and uncle. Most accepted without question, likely assuming I was a work colleague or acquaintance. Through this window, I began monitoring their conversations, particularly in the family group they didn't know I could see. Daniel has no idea what's coming, Sarah had written in one post. He's been so isolated since Dad died. Just make sure he doesn't bring anyone to the party, Tom replied. We need him alone for this to work. Uncle Richard chimed in. He trusts us. That's his weakness. Reading their words made my hands shake with a mixture of hurt and anger, but it also strengthened my resolve to beat them at their own game. The third phase of my plan required a performance. At a neighborhood barbecue the weekend before my birthday, where I knew my cousin Melissa would be present, I made sure to appear slightly intoxicated. I mentioned how I'd been drinking more than usual since Dad's death, suggesting that on most evenings I was pretty out of it by 8 o'clock. Melissa, predictably, relayed this information to Sarah. The next day, my sister called with mock concern. I heard you're having a rough time, she said. Maybe we should move the party earlier in the day? No need, I assured her, slurring my words slightly. I'm fine. Looking forward to seeing everyone. On Wednesday, 3 days before the party, I called Emma Reynolds, my childhood friend who now worked as a legal videographer. We met at a coffee shop 2 towns over, where I was certain no family members would spot us. Let me get this straight, Emma said after I explained the situation. You want me to pose as your girlfriend at this party and secretly record your family trying to scam you? Not exactly pose as my girlfriend, I clarified. Just be there as moral support. And yes, document anything suspicious. Emma stirred her latte thoughtfully. Your sister Sarah always was a piece of work. Remember when she convinced you that your bike had been stolen, then found it a week later? I nodded. Sarah had actually hidden the bike herself, wanting to be seen as the hero. I'll do it, Emma decided. Dad just got me a new smartwatch that can record audio. No one will suspect a thing. The final piece fell into place the day before my birthday. I printed copies of all the evidence I'd gathered so far. The social media conversations, notes from my meeting with Mr. Henderson, screenshots of the security camera locations, and locked them in a small fireproof safe in my bedroom closet. Then I reviewed the video from Dad's study, which had captured Tom returning twice more to search through the files. That night, I rehearsed appearing surprised, grateful, and slightly tipsy. I practiced signing my name with a subtle mistake, one that could later help invalidate any document if necessary. I memorized the locations of my cameras and planned my movements to ensure key conversations would be captured clearly. As I finally fell asleep, I felt a strange mix of sadness and strength. Tomorrow, my family would learn that the quiet, trusting son they thought they could manipulate had been observing them all along. The silent observer was ready. My birthday dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through the curtains I'd forgotten to close. For a moment, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, contemplating how different this day would be from what my family expected. The house was quiet now, but in a few hours, it would be filled with false cheer and hidden agendas. Emma arrived early carrying a genuine gift, a first edition of my favorite mystery novel, and wearing a concerned expression. "You look terrible," she said, setting down her purse. "Did you sleep at all?" "Not much," I admitted, accepting her quick hug. "Keep your watch ready. They'll be here at 2. We spent the morning reviewing our strategy and checking the cameras one final time. At 1 o'clock, I changed into a casual, button-down shirt and jeans, deliberately underdressed for what Sarah had called a special occasion. Emma positioned herself in the kitchen, ready to observe while pretending to help with preparations. The doorbell rang at exactly 2. Taking a deep breath, I plastered on my most vulnerable smile and opened the door. "Surprise," called Sarah, though there was nothing surprising about a party I'd been invited to. Behind her stood Tom, his wife Jen, Uncle Richard, and a parade of cousins and distant relatives, all beaming with manufactured delight. "Wow," I managed, feigning shock. "I didn't expect all this." Sarah pushed past me, carrying a store-bought cake. "We wanted to make your birthday special this year, after everything that's happened." My living room had been transformed without my permission. Balloons crowded the ceiling, streamers draped across Dad's antique furniture, and a large table had been positioned conspicuously in the center of the room. On it sat wrapped gifts, neatly arranged, and beneath them, partially visible, a manila folder with what looked like legal documents. "Daniel, you remember Cousin Patricia," Uncle Richard said, steering a woman I barely recognized toward me. "She came all the way from Phoenix for your special day." The house filled quickly with people, many of whom had never bothered to attend Dad's funeral. I moved through the crowd, accepting hollow congratulations while keeping a careful eye on my brother Tom, who kept glancing nervously toward the document table. "Where can I put this?" Emma asked loudly, carrying a bowl of punch into the living room. She strategically placed it on a side table with a clear view of the main area, her smartwatch positioned perfectly. Aunt Meredith cornered me by the fireplace. "Daniel, you look thin. Are you eating properly? It must be so hard managing this big house all alone." Her eyes darted around the room Dad and I had renovated together. "So much upkeep for one person." "I manage," I said simply. "Well, perhaps. After today things will be easier for everyone," she replied with a knowing smile. As the party progressed, I noticed how carefully choreographed everything seemed. The seating arrangements placed me in Dad's old armchair, positioned directly across from the document table. My cousins created a steady stream of distractions, showing me photos on their phones, asking about my job, keeping me engaged while Sarah and Uncle Richard huddled in whispered conversation near the dining room. "Time for cake," Sarah announced an hour in, clapping her hands like a kindergarten teacher. "Everyone gather around." The cake was chocolate, My least favorite, but Tom's preferred flavor. Another small detail they'd gotten wrong. As everyone sang an off-key rendition of Happy Birthday, I noticed how Tom had sidled up to the document table, casually rearranging the gifts to better reveal the manila folder. "Make a wish, Danny," Sarah urged, using a childhood nickname I'd always hated. I closed my eyes, blew out the candles, and when I opened them, caught Uncle Richard giving Sarah a subtle nod. "Speech," called my cousin Pete, right on cue. I stood, awkwardly, champagne glass in hand, actually filled with apple juice, though no one knew that. "Thanks everyone for coming. It means a lot after Dad." I deliberately let my voice crack. "Family is all we have, right?" "To family." Uncle Richard raised his glass, a triumphant gleam in his eye. After the toast, Sarah guided me toward the gift table. "Open mine first," she insisted, handing me a small box containing an expensive watch I knew she couldn't afford on her teacher's salary. As I expressed exaggerated gratitude, Tom casually slid into the seat beside me. "After gifts, there's something we should all discuss as a family," he said, his tone artificially light. "Some paperwork Dad would have wanted sorted out." "Paperwork? On my birthday?" I asked, feigning naivety. "Just a formality," Uncle Richard interjected, appearing suddenly at my shoulder. "A way to make sure everyone's taken care of, the way your father would have wanted." I noticed how the relatives had formed a loose circle around me, not threatening, but making it difficult to leave without seeming rude. Emma caught my eye from across the room and tapped her watch twice. The gifts continued, each one more expensive than the last, as if they were paying me off in advance. A designer jacket from Tom and Jen, golf clubs from Uncle Richard, a vacation voucher from cousins who'd never given me so much as a card before. When the last present had been opened, Sarah dramatically cleared her throat. "And now," she announced, "there's one more thing we wanted to discuss with you, Daniel." On cue, my cousin Melissa's 4-year-old daughter knocked over her cup of punch, creating a commotion on the far side of the room. As everyone's attention turned toward the spill, Tom smoothly slid the folder from beneath the wrapping paper and placed it directly in front of me. "Just some adjustments to Dad's will," he said quietly. "To make things fair for everyone. All you need to do is sign." I picked up the document, pretending to skim it while actually reading every word. It was exactly what I'd suspected. A redistribution agreement that would effectively nullify Dad's wishes, dividing the house and business equally among all siblings, and giving Uncle Richard control of the financial assets for management purposes. "Right now?" I asked, my voice deliberately unsteady. "I'm not sure I understand all this legal language." "It's very straightforward," Uncle Richard assured me, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder while sliding a pen into my fingers. "Just a family taking care of family." Sarah leaned in close, her smile tight. "Dad was confused when he made his will. This fixes things, makes them fair. You want to be fair, don't you, Danny?" The circle around me tightened slightly. Through the window, I could see the sun beginning to set, casting long shadows across my father's living room, the room where he'd taught me to always look carefully at what I was signing. The pen felt cold in my hand as I looked up at their expectant faces. "Before I sign," I said slowly, "there's something I'd like to share with everyone." "Before I sign," I repeated, setting the pen down deliberately. "There's something I'd like to share with everyone." The room quieted, a few relatives exchanging confused glances. Sarah's smile faltered slightly. I prepared a special birthday presentation, I continued, standing up slowly. Something to remind us all about family. Emma, right on cue, moved toward my laptop sitting on the desk in the corner. She opened it casually, as if this had been planned as part of the celebration all along. A slideshow? Aunt Meredith asked, her voice tinged with impatience. Perhaps we should handle the paperwork first, dear. These things can wait. It'll just take a minute, I insisted, nodding to Emma, who connected the laptop to the large television Dad had mounted above the fireplace years ago. I think everyone will find it enlightening. Uncle Richard shifted uncomfortably. Daniel, we're here to celebrate you, not watch home movies. The documents will still be here after my presentation, I finished firmly. It's my birthday, after all. The television flickered to life as Emma pressed play. Instead of the expected family photos or birthday wishes, the screen showed crisp security footage of my own living room, dated 3 days earlier. Tom and Sarah sat on the couch, Uncle Richard pacing before them. What is this? Sarah asked, her voice suddenly sharp. On the screen, Uncle Richard's voice rang out clearly. Daniel's always been the soft one. He'll sign if we all pressure him. We just need to make him emotional enough. A collective gasp rippled through the room. My cousin Pete muttered something under his breath and stepped back, bumping into the coffee table. The video continued relentlessly. Sarah on screen. He trusts me more than Tom. I'll hand him the papers after the gifts when his guard is down. Tom. Are we sure this is legal? Uncle Richard. Legal enough. Once he signs, the redistribution is binding. The business alone is worth millions. I let the video play for another excruciating minute, showing them planning the seating arrangement, discussing how to corner me, even practicing the exact wording they would use. In the current room, faces had drained of color. My youngest cousin slipped out the front door without a word. There's more, I said quietly, nodding to Emma, who switched to a different file. Now the screen showed Tom in Dad's office at midnight, rifling through the filing cabinet, speaking on the phone. I can't find the original will. Keep looking for a way to challenge it. Another clip. Sarah and Uncle Richard in my kitchen just yesterday arranging documents. How stupid does he think we are? Sarah was saying. Dad built that business from nothing, and he leaves it all to Daniel just because he worked there? What about the rest of us? Uncle Richard. After today, it won't matter what the original will said. I finally allowed myself to look directly at my family members. Some wouldn't meet my gaze. Others looked trapped. Sarah's face had contorted with a mixture of rage and embarrassment. Turn that off, she hissed. You had no right to record us. In my house? I questioned, keeping my voice steady. The house Dad left to me? Uncle Richard stepped forward, reaching for the power cord of the television. This is ridiculous. These videos prove nothing legally. I wouldn't do that, Emma warned, holding up her phone. I'm recording this entire interaction, and Daniel's attorney has copies of everything. Uncle. Richard froze, his hand dropping to his side. There's one more clip I think everyone should see, I said, nodding to Emma, who pressed play again. The final video was the most damning, a recording from just last week in Dad's old study. Uncle Richard stood before a mirror, practicing his speech. Daniel, he rehearsed, your father was getting confused toward the end. We all know he didn't mean to create such an unfair situation. This agreement simply restores what he truly intended. He repeated the speech several times, adjusting his concerned expression, perfecting his tone of paternal authority. In the corner of the current room, Uncle Richard's face had turned crimson. "You recorded all of this, secretly?" Tom asked, his voice hollow. "I learned from the best," I replied. "Didn't I, Sarah? Like when you bugged my room in high school to get evidence I was sneaking out?" The silence in the room was absolute. Even the children had stopped fidgeting, sensing the tension. "I trusted you," I continued, looking around at their faces. "When Dad died, I needed my family. Instead, you saw an opportunity. You thought I was too naive to notice." I picked up the document they'd tried to make me sign and tore it deliberately down the middle. "Dad knew exactly what he was doing with his will," I said firmly. "He recognized who stood by him and who only showed up when there was something to gain." Sarah recovered first, her shock transforming into defiance. "This doesn't change anything. Legally, we can still contest the will." "You're welcome to try," I replied. "Mr. Henderson has been documenting your behavior for months, including today's attempt to defraud me." Uncle Richard finally found his voice. This is a misunderstanding. We were only trying to—" "Save it," I interrupted. "The party's over. I think you all should leave." There was a moment of hesitation, then Aunt Meredith gathered her purse and headed for the door without a word. Others followed quickly, murmuring, awkward goodbyes or avoiding eye contact entirely. Tom lingered by the door, looking both ashamed and resentful. "Daniel, Not now," I said quietly. "Maybe someday, but not today." As the last car pulled away from the curb, Emma placed a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I stared at the half-eaten cake, the torn document, the paused video still displaying my family's betrayal in high definition. "No," I answered honestly, "but I will be." The house felt suddenly vast and empty, much like it had after Dad's funeral. But this time the silence felt different. Not just filled with grief, but with a strange sense of clarity. I had lost something today, but it wasn't my inheritance. It was the illusion that blood always meant loyalty. The morning after my birthday, I woke to an unusually quiet house. No more hidden cameras needed, no more pretending. The evidence of yesterday's confrontation remained scattered throughout the living room. Deflated balloons, half-eaten cake, empty glasses. Normally, I would have cleaned up immediately, but something held me back. Perhaps I needed the physical reminder that it had all really happened. My phone had been buzzing with notifications since dawn. I finally checked it over coffee. 12. Missed calls from Sarah, 5 from Tom, 3 voicemails from Uncle Richard, each more conciliatory than the last. Several text messages from cousins expressing shock, claiming they had no idea what was really happening. I deleted them all without responding. At precisely 9 o'clock, I called Mr. Henderson. "It worked exactly as we anticipated," I told him, staring out the kitchen window at Dad's oak tree swaying in the morning breeze. "They tried to get me to sign the redistribution agreement. And the video evidence? Crystal clear. They can't deny any of it." He sighed deeply. "Daniel, I've known your family for 30 years. I'm truly sorry it came to this." "Me too," I said quietly. "Can you meet today to secure everything legally? I don't want any loose ends they might exploit." 2 hours later, I sat in his office, signing documents that would make it nearly impossible for my family to contest Dad's will. As the notary stamped the final page, a strange sense of hollowness settled over me. I had won, but the victory felt empty. "What will you do now?" Mr. Henderson asked as he walked me to the door. I hadn't thought beyond the confrontation. Focus on the business, I guess. Live my life. Your father would be proud, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Not just of how you protected his wishes, but of your restraint. You could have pressed charges for attempted fraud. Many would have. The thought hadn't even occurred to me. Despite everything, they were still family. I spent the rest of the day at Dad's, my accounting firm, reviewing client files and finding comfort in the familiar routine of numbers and spreadsheets. Around 4 o'clock, my office door opened without a knock. I looked up, expecting my assistant with the quarterly reports. Instead, my youngest sister Kate stood there, eyes red-rimmed, clutching her purse like a shield. We had never been close. 7 years younger than me, she had been away at college when Dad fell ill and had only returned for brief visits during his final months. She hadn't been at the birthday party. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, unsure what to expect. "I saw the video," she said after settling nervously. "Sarah sent it to me, trying to get me on their side. She said you were being unreasonable." I waited, my guard still up. "I knew they were planning something," Kate continued, tears welling in her eyes. "They called me last month, trying to convince me to come to your party and help. Persuade you. I refused. I thought if I just stayed out of it." She trailed off, looking down at her hands. "You knew and didn't warn me?" I asked, surprised by how much that hurt. "I was scared," she admitted. "Uncle Richard has always intimidated me, and Sarah—" She shook her head. "I convinced myself it wasn't my business. That was wrong, and I'm sorry." Her honesty disarmed me. For the first time since Dad's death, someone in my family was being straightforward. "What do you want, Kate?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "I don't want anything from the inheritance. I don't want to lose my brother, too." Something tight in my chest loosened slightly. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal consultations and certified letters. Sarah attempted to challenge the will but backed down when Mr. Henderson presented the video evidence to her attorney. Uncle Richard left a series of increasingly desperate voicemails, eventually resorting to threats that only strengthened my case. Tom sent a single text message. I was just trying to provide for my kids. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on moving forward. I hired 2 new accountants to expand the business. I redecorated parts of the house, making it truly mine instead of a shrine to Dad. And every Sunday, Kate came over for dinner, awkward at first, then gradually more comfortable as we rebuilt what had been broken. 6 months after my birthday revelation, I made a decision that would have surprised the old Daniel. I established the Carter Family Financial Literacy Trust, using a portion of my inheritance to fund free workshops on estate planning, will preparation, and family financial mediation. "Are you sure about this?" Emma asked when I told her my plans, over lunch. "After what they tried to do?" "Because of what they tried," I corrected her. "Maybe if they'd understood Dad's decisions better, or knew how to manage their own finances." I let the thought hang unfinished. The truth was more complex. The trust wasn't just about preventing other families from making the same mistakes. It was my way of making peace with what had happened, transforming betrayal into something constructive. At our first workshop, held at the local community center, I scanned the room of attendees nervously. Part of me had worried my family might show up, creating an uncomfortable scene. But the faces looking back at me were all strangers, people genuinely seeking guidance. As I began my presentation about the importance of clear communication in estate planning, I caught sight of someone slipping in at the back of the room. Kate, with a notepad ready, giving me an encouraging smile. Some family bonds had been permanently severed on my 35th birthday. Others, unexpectedly, had been strengthened. And new connections were forming with people who shared my goal of preventing financial deception. Dad had always told me that true wealth wasn't just about money, it was about integrity. Standing before that room of eager learners, I finally understood what he meant. I had lost family but found purpose. And in the end, that was the most valuable inheritance of all.